Welcome back to Coach Bill Sports Show. As always, I'm Coach Bill. Sorry we're getting started a little later. Had a little bit of a bug going around the household, so now that I got my voice back, feeling a little better, we're going to dive into it. So this week we're going to start off with the rankings show. College football playoff rankings came out, so it's time for the Coach Bill Show rankings. But let's get into it. Let's start off with some of my honorable mentions here. We'll start off with the honorable mentions with Notre Dame. Notre Dame's really been playing better as of late. Washington, Purdue, Texas Tech, and UNC, North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill's probably going to end up playing Clemson in the ACC championship, and they might have the firepower to upset Clemson. So that's a big one there for the Tar Heels. Purdue is still in the hunt for their conference championship. So that's another one that's an interesting games ahead. But let's look at 25 to 21. So 25 Arkansas, 24 Baylor, 23 Oklahoma, 22 Liberty, 21 Texas. You'll see a little bit of a cluster here and then later on of these Big 12 teams. And in the rankings themselves, we've come into a tier system for the Big 12. Oklahoma, Texas, and Baylor kind of fit in the same tier. I know that's weird to say considering Texas blew Oklahoma out of the water, but I don't think that was Oklahoma. I think they were missing their quarterback, and I just think it was that game for Texas. So I think everything went right for Texas, everything went wrong for Oklahoma, and that was the result of that game. Arkansas is showing a little fight here recently, looking a little dominant on some teams, but we'll keep it moving to the 20 to 16. Kentucky fell pretty hard after a loss to Tennessee, but so did Syracuse. Syracuse lost to Notre Dame and fell. Wake Forest lost and fell. LSU is probably my biggest climber of the week. They looked really, really good. LSU is one of those teams that you'll see here in a little bit where I just don't know what to do with them. They're good games, they can fight with anybody. They're bad games, they are atrocious. So I'm putting together a bowl wild card, I guess is what I'm calling them. And LSU's at the top of the list for the bowl wild cards. Depending on the matchup, they're going to give somebody a fight, an absolute drag-out fight. Illinois looking like they'll be playing either Michigan or Ohio State for the Big Ten championship. Quietly, one-loss team just keeping around, chugging along there at 16. Now we're getting to our sponsored by the Pac-12. Just joking. No sponsors to the show yet. But this is our Pac-12 heavy section, 15 through essentially 10. So USC busting in at 15. Minnesota at 14. UCLA at 13. 12 is Utah. 11 is Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State lost to my other big riser, which we'll see here in a little bit, of Kansas State. But it wasn't just a loss. It was embarrassing. It really was. To get shut out in college football is embarrassing, especially when you're a higher-ranked team. But for the Pac-12, these three teams and then the team coming later ahead are the four front runners for the I don't want to say the playoff because I don't think a Pac-12 team makes the playoff this year. Unfortunate, it is. They're talented. They're super fun to watch. I just don't see them making a push. Too much is coming from the ACC or not the ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC, that the Pac-12 just kind of is the odd man out right now. Yeah, they're playing some great football. If they still had an undefeated team, who knows? If Georgia can go undefeated and Oregon's won losses to Georgia, they still have an outside shot. But I just don't see, with how the rankings broke down for the playoff rankings, just don't see how Oregon really makes that leap happen. So let's talk about Oregon. Oregon here, coming in number 10 on my rankings. Bo Nix, like I said last time, looking like a completely different guy. Completely different dude. Pac-12 versus SEC is night and day. Absolute night and day. Oregon's got some talent, doing some explosive stuff. Ole Miss, still hanging in there. Took that one bad loss, but they still got a shot against Alabama. They still got a shot at the SEC championship to come out of the West. It essentially becomes between Ole Miss, LSU, who still randomly has a shot, and Alabama for the SEC West. Then the next two here are, they're essentially playing the championship game before the championship game, and that's Michigan at 8, Ohio State at 7. Michigan is the old school run first, run second, run third. We're going to run and you can't stop us kind of team. And it's nice to see. It really is. I just don't know how well they'll do against an Ohio State team at the end of the season when it's at Ohio State. Ohio State's dominant defense is waking up, and Ohio State can push them into a shootout, and we just haven't seen Michigan have to do that yet. Michigan's been able to control the ball on the ground, control all that stuff as of late. And I just don't see them being able to do it. Speaking of Ohio State's at number 7 in this list. Continuing with the trend for Ohio State, they just really haven't played anybody, and the algorithm comes out and says, hey, if you haven't played anybody, you haven't proven to us that you can win these games. I'm not saying Ohio State isn't talented. They're very talented. But they've not been put in those pressure situations. They haven't been battle tested. And another video I'll do here in the next day or two about ranked wins. It hasn't happened for them. I know a lot of people are going to tell me, Notre Dame. And yeah, that was the first game of the season. But look, they struggled in that game. They struggled for 3 quarters against Penn State in Happy Valley. Yeah, that defense woke up. That offense kind of woke up afterwards. I don't even want to say the offense woke up. That was a defensive win for them. So was the Notre Dame game. Those were both defensive wins for Ohio State. And there are offenses that you'll play in the playoffs that just won't fly against. You try that against Alabama, they're going to shoot the roof out on you. Good luck trying to be dominant and stop, Georgia or Tennessee. I think they could do it with Clemson. I'd be surprised if they could do it with TCU. TCU's offense is humming. And there's too many guys on the field to cover. So that's my concern with Ohio State right now is, yeah, they had a wonderful defensive, and I don't want to take anything away from the team currently. I'm just looking ahead, and they haven't been battle tested. And looking ahead, the defense that's been able to bail them out of close games, will it be able to do that against some of this other competition? And that's what we got to see. That's why they play the game. So, number 6, another one of my big risers. I think it was the second biggest riser. Kansas State. They put an absolute whoop on the Oklahoma State team. They took them to the woodshed. They did. If you can shut out a ranked team at home, that's huge, and that's what the rankings are showing. It's a big play for them. And that's why they were able to jump so high. Now we're getting into our real contenders. So at number 5, we got Georgia. I know this is going to be a little surprising, but Georgia plays Tennessee this weekend. We're going to break that down here in a little bit as well. But I think after this weekend, we'll have a clear cut of who's coming out of the East, which will make a lot of other things fall into place as far as the rankings go. Georgia is another team that really hasn't played as many ranked teams as some of the others have, and that's why they kind of sit here at 5. Now, they've had some very dominant wins against their lesser opponents, which is why they've been able to stay ahead of Ohio State. So, little thing there. Sorry, I went wrong way. Number 4 is Alabama. The one loss to Tennessee on a last-second field goal is really their only blemish. Alabama looks dominant, looks getting back to regular. The only reason they're at 4 and not higher is because the 3 teams above them are undefeated. The boost you get in the algorithm for being undefeated is considerable. Interesting enough, though, speaking of the algorithm, Alabama and Georgia are separated by 2 points on the algorithm, which essentially means it's a toss-up game. You flip a coin in the air, Alabama may win, Georgia may win. That's essentially how the algorithm views it right now. It's just interesting to me that the rematch is essentially a toss-up game there. TCU, number 3, undefeated. Offensively just chugging along. Battle-tested, winning close games, making comebacks. The question mark for TCU is that defense. 100% the question mark for TCU is that defense. And, they may or may not make the final breakdown. Personally, I hope TCU does make the playoff, simply because it'd be good for that program. It'd be good for college football. And that program, they're exciting. It is an exciting brand of football to watch. If you haven't gotten to watch a Big 12 game, catch TCU. They're just exciting to watch. On the flip side of that, number 2, Clemson. So Clemson's defense is strong. Clemson's defense is very strong. My question with Clemson's offense is, can DJ win you games? Because right now, you're running the ball with Will Shipley, you're playing defense, and you're winning games. And you can do that. Against ACC opponents, you can do that. But can you do that when you get pushed into a shootout with TCU? Can you do that against Alabama, who's going to stop the run? Can you do that against Georgia, who's going to stop the run? Can you do that against an Ohio State, who's going to push a shootout? See what I'm saying? That's where my question lies with Clemson is, can they still swing with the big dogs with DJ as the quarterback? I don't know. I don't know at all. That's why we got to watch. That's why we got to play the games. But like I said, Clemson, nothing taken away from them. They're a good team. They should go undefeated. The only real test will be the ACC championship game, and that's if Carolina makes it from the other side. There's still a chance they could not. So Carolina is the only real threat for Clemson right now. Let's see, they end the season with South Carolina, who isn't really threatening for them either. The tail end of their schedule is fairly easy. It's very coastable, which is another thing that concerns me for Clemson. Is you haven't really outside of a trip to Notre Dame this weekend, you haven't really been tested recently. You had a rough start against Syracuse, but you have more talent than Syracuse. You should win that game. You had a rougher start against NC State, but you won the game. You came back. So you've had some tests, but I'm afraid the easiness of the games that are coming ahead are going to dilute what we're going to see Clemson in the playoffs as. And Clemson in the playoffs, I don't know if I'm worried about them right now. Unfortunately, because I love seeing Clemson play in the playoffs. I love seeing them win in the playoffs. It's good for college football when a non-SEC team in the South can play like that. It allows the ACC to kind of thrive and continue to do what they can do. It's good to see Big Ten teams play. It's good to see Big 12 teams play. I hope to see Pac-12 getting back into it again. So, but without further ado, number 1 overall, good old Rocky Top, Tennessee. Their win this past week, the defense showing up as much as it did really catapulted Tennessee. They're actually 200 points ahead of Clemson right now in the rankings. 200 points breaks down to roughly a 10-point advantage. Now, would I say that against all the teams? No. But against Clemson, they've got about a 10-point advantage if they play like they played against Kentucky. Defense showed up. They had pressures. They had interceptions, short fields. The offense was explosive. They ran the ball well. Tennessee is looking like a better team every week, and that's scary. That's very scary. I wish I had the ability to go back in time and put $100 on them preseason when they were 10,000 to 1. Real talk. Wish I had that ability. Anybody got a time machine, you let me know. We'll make that happen. But breaking it down into the tiers. So Tennessee, Clemson, TCU, and Alabama are my current playoff teams. Just on the outside looking in is Georgia, Kansas State, and Ohio State. Kansas State does still have a chance if they win, if TCU wins out, and a couple other things kind of happen their way. They do still have a small chance, but it's very, very unlikely. Again, we're still with a chance. Michigan, Ole Miss, Oregon, UCLA, and Illinois. So let's actually break down some of what they need to do. Essentially for Tennessee, Clemson, TCU, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, and Alabama, all you need to do is win. If you win out, you win your championship, you're in. If you're one of those teams, that's as simple as it can be. Win what's ahead of you, win each week. You're into the playoffs. Very easy. For Oregon to make the playoffs, they need to win out. They need to win the Pac-12, and they need Georgia to go undefeated. If their one loss is to an undefeated SEC championship Georgia, you got a real good shot at making the playoffs because they're going to want to see that game again. Ole Miss still has a shot. They need to win out, face an undefeated SEC East, if that's Georgia or Tennessee, team, and win the SEC championship to get in. They do that, they're in. Simple as that. They had a stumble, one loss, but they can still make it in as the SEC champ. UCLA has a tougher road. Same with Illinois, but UCLA needs to win out. They need to face a one-loss Oregon in the Pac-12 championship to avenge that loss. They also need TCU and or Clemson, probably both, to take a loss, if not a bad loss. So bad loss would be to an unranked team, typically at home. So let's say I don't have TCU's schedule ahead of me or Clemson's, but let's say Clemson, last game of the year, loses at home to South Carolina. That's a bad loss. So UCLA needs a lot of dominoes to fall for them to make the playoff, at least in my algorithm. Illinois, same thing. They need to win out, beat an undefeated Ohio State team in the Big Ten championship, and have TCU or Clemson lose. It has to be Ohio State. I think if Michigan beats if Michigan beats Ohio State and then Ohio State, and then Michigan loses to Illinois, I think Michigan and Ohio State both make better cases than Illinois does. Just simply because of who they've been able to play. Illinois, unfortunately for the Big Ten, they're a victim of their own schedules. And there's not a lot of ranked opponent on your schedule in the Big Ten. So Illinois needs that big win against Ohio State. And then TCU and or Clemson, probably both, to lose for them to make it a shot. So that's what it's going to take for several of those teams out there. Again, this is just my algorithm. Still working on it, still tweaking on it. Someday we'll get it perfect. Probably not. Either way, thank you for watching. I hope you had a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. You know it definitely helps the channel. You hear it everywhere. Just hit the bell, get notifications, all that good stuff. But thank you for watching. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Ready, break.